Geoverse Part 5 Prisoner of Love by GeodesicDragon Chapter 1 Prologue. As I finally tore myself away from my wife, I turned to see that Princess Celestia was looking at me expectantly. "I cannot thank you enough, Princess," I said, bowing deeply. "Whatever punishment you wish upon me, I shall comply with it." "Ah, yes," said Celestia, "your punishment." The smile on her face was unnerving, to say the least. I shared a worried look with Twilight. "Do not worry," Celestia said, raising a hoof. "It is nothing too bad." There was an awkward silence, eventually broken by Twilight. "So," she hesitated, "what is his punishment?" Celestia smiled. "House arrest," she replied, rather smugly. Twilight and I looked at each other and grinned. I hugged her tightly, taking care not to squeeze her too hard. "At the palace." Our grins turned to looks of shock. "I'm sorry," I said, tapping the side of my head. "But did you say at the palace?" Celestia nodded. "I realized that you never took me up on my offer of a chat," she said. "So this is the ideal punishment." I chuckled awkwardly and rubbed the back of my neck. "So what exactly will my punishment involve?" Celestia grinned. "As with any normal house arrest," she said, "you will be confined to a room for most of the day. However, for 3 hours each day, I will come and talk to you about various things. Your life in Equestria, your life back in your world, your friends, and so forth." I looked over at Twilight. "Twilight is due to give birth any day now," I said, "and I want to be there, if you would be so kind." Celestia interrupted me. "I will allow you to attend the birth of your child," she said. "Not only that, I will also allow you to spend weekends with them." I smiled. "That's great," I said, "because the last thing I want is for my own kid to not know who the hell I am." Celestia and Twilight giggled. The former motioned with her head and a guard came over. I smiled when I recognized him. "Hey, Shining Armor." "Hey, Geo," he said. "Hey, Twily." "Hi, bro." "Since you are under house arrest, I still have to assign a guard to keep an eye on you," Celestia said. "I'm sorry, but it's protocol. I can't make any exceptions." "No biggie," I replied. "But surely this sort of thing is more suited to a normal guard and not the captain?" Celestia looked at Shining, who smiled. "I volunteered," he said. "You are my brother-in-law, after all." I returned his smile. Then I noticed the manacles he was carrying. "Let me guess," I said as I pointed at them. "They're protocol too." Shining nodded, his smile fading slightly. "Sorry," he said sheepishly, "but as Princess Celestia said, we can't make exceptions for any pony." He put the manacles on me with his magic. "I guess my sentence begins now?" I asked. Celestia and Shining nodded. "I'm coming too. I'm coming too," Twilight said as she stood up. "I'm sorry, Twily," Shining Armor said, "but those under house arrest are not allowed to have any visitors." Twilight's face fell. "No exceptions?" she said, putting on her best puppy dog eyes. Shining sighed. "Not even for you, sis," he said. "Then," Twilight said as she fought back tears, "at least let me come and say goodbye to him." Shining glanced at Celestia, who nodded. "Thank you." Twilight smiled. The 4 of us left the courtroom and out into the corridor. Princess Celestia's presence had already been spread throughout the building, so there was no gasping. Instead, there was simply bowing and smiling. Celestia fixed a large smile on her face as we walked, nodding at any pony who bowed before her. I attracted a few curious stares, probably because I was a prisoner in the company of one of the princesses. As we stepped out into the cool morning air, I saw John and Applejack heading towards Sugarcube Corner. "Make sure you tell her, you dolt," I thought as the chariot landed in front of us. The guards pulling it bowed to Celestia and saluted Shining Armor. Celestia motioned for me to get in, which I did. Twilight stood with a look of shock on her face. I chuckled. "Don't worry, Twilight," I said to her. "I'm not going away forever. I'll be there when you go into labor." There was a pause before Twilight replied. "You're there already," she said. "Because my waters just broke." Celestia, Shining, and I looked at her with shocked expressions of our own. "What?" Shining exclaimed, throwing a hoof into the air. "But you're not due for another month." "She's actually been pregnant for a month longer than we thought," I replied. "She knew even before the scan." "So that means her due date," Shining trailed off. "Is today," I yelled, finishing his sentence. "We have to get her to the hospital. Now!" Celestia's horn glowed, and Twilight was lifted into the air and placed gently into the chariot. The princess then conjured a blanket and placed it over her as I held her hoof reassuringly. "You too," Shining barked at the Pegasi pulling the chariot. "Get her over to Pony&Wolf General Hospital, on the double!" "Yes, sir," the Pegasi replied, saluting quickly. They took off as quickly as they could, but also with a sense of delicacy, given the state of their passenger. The trip to the hospital was quick. As we landed and Princess Celestia called out the doctors, Twilight's contractions started. And then I started wishing I hadn't held her hoof the whole journey.